particular, this is the first time that Africa, the 54 countries of the African continent and the Italian Republic get together to discuss matters of mutual interest among our two countries, the continent and Italy. The Matteo Plan is a plan that is meant to support Africa in terms of key issues like the energy, the infrastructure, the security, and the information sharing as well as democratization and human rights, and all these issues are there. But the focus now was those aspects that addresses the migration, the mobility, and the security of the continent, so that Africa will be in a position to create an effective bull factor instead of the current bush factor situation that exists in the continent. Africa is a continent where 70% of the population are young, less than 30 years old. Africa is a very resourceful country, yes, but there are circumstances that Africa alone cannot solve. So with the Italy and the influence and the global influence and guidance of Italy, I think Africa has a great opportunity. For us, Somalia, we are a country that was considered to be reborn, the rebirth of Somalia. Just lost everything and starting everything from scratch. Security was the top priority for the country, because without security, we cannot discuss about state building, democracy, economic recovery. All this can come only when there is a secure environment where the movement of people and the goods and the ideas are possible as well. So this was a priority we started when I came back to the office May 2022. Our top priority, number one, number two, number three, was the security. Yes, other aspects of state building all were going on. Capacitating the state institutions as well was a major area that we were focusing, but security was the top priority. Parallelly, we have been working to that direction. Somalia, the security was handled by the African Union mission in Somalia for the last 16 years. That mission is going to end 31st December 2024, this year. And Somalia has to take over the responsibility of its security by its own. So it's one of the areas that Somalia was interesting, was the support of Italy in the security sector development. Somalia has the longest coast in the African continent. If we cannot secure these coasts, we cannot secure the migration, we cannot secure the movement of the terrorists, we cannot secure the piracy issue, which is creating havoc to the economy of the world today as we are speaking. So Somalia and its strategic location that it is very important for both the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea. So we come up here in Italy with that message that supporting Somalia is not only, there are two issues. One, there are certain problems that if you solve that problem, you solve that problem. And there are other problems, when you solve that problem, you solve a cascading other problems as well. Somalia is that category. If the Somalia is resolved and make a stable and secure place, many problems will be resolved completely or partly. So this is the importance of Somalia has, and this is the message we brought this great summit here in Rome.
Mr. President, speaking about Somalia, we saw the agreement that the government of Ethiopia did with Somaliland about the harbor. What are the reasons that you believe stand behind this agreement? Why they did it? What may be the consequences? And how do you believe that your government could stop this from happening?
Thank you very much. First of all, Somalia and Ethiopia are two neighboring countries, and we are not neighbors by choice. We are neighbors by the, brought by the eternal. We have 1,700 kilometers of border. This border is not marked. It's a provisional border. If you go to the map, you will see it's a cut, it's not a direct line. And being a neighbors, we have a history of 600 years. That history was a very, very violent history. Jihad, crusade on both sides was led. But that chapter of history ended in 1990 when both this Ethiopian state and the Somali state collapsed. Siad Barre of Somalia and Mengistu Haile Mariam of Ethiopia, they ran away from the two countries, and the two countries went into a civil war, and then we came back. So we Somalis, when we reestablished the Third Republic, which is running Somalia today in 2000, our understanding was we closed that chapter. So we're going to open a new chapter of economic integration, new chapter of borderless territories, new chapter of supporting each other. The Italian government has been supporting that initiative, the Horn Economic Integration Initiative. And the Prime Minister Meloni, she came to Addis Ababa, and we have a trilateral meeting in Addis Ababa, Somalia, Ethiopia, and Italy. We've agreed that we will develop a joint infrastructure and a joint economic hub for both countries and for the rest of Africa as well. And the Prime Minister has promised that Italy will support that initiative, and Italy will advocate that initiative within Europe as well. So it was good. Then we have a second meeting here in Rome again. So that was the environment that we have been working. That was the hope, and that was the future we have been envisioning. Unfortunately, 1st January this year, this thing happened. Somaliland, yes, they claim that they break away from Somalia, but that was the case for the last 31 years. And no one country in the world has recognized it. Somaliland, no, IGAT has not recognized it. AU has not recognized it. The Arab League, which we are part, has not recognized it. And Ethiopia has not recognized it for 30 years. Out of blue, it just happened now. I cannot explain why, but there are a lot of speculations. Somalia is just turning the corner and coming back to its rightful position. So do it before it become a strong country or again back to its position, maybe one of the ideas. Maybe other ideas. But what I know is that Ethiopia has no capacity at all to build a naval base and a port and a corridor of highways and terrain and all this. There must be a hidden hand behind this initiative, but it will come out. The government of Somalia, the Federal Republic of Somalia has rejected the idea. We go into IGAT. IGAT has rejected, the AU and the United Nations and the EU as well. All has rejected by respecting the international law, a sacrosanct principle that says the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of each member state has to be respected. That is where the situation is. And this is a time, you know, in 2006, when the Islamic Courts Union, a group of Islamists, took over many parts of Somalia, Ethiopia intervened in Somalia. They send 50,000 troops to Somalia, and they go all the way to Mogadishu. Because of that intervention, these terrorist groups, extremist groups, they were within the Islamist groups, but they were not out and they were not prominent. Because of that intervention, now they got up and they took the old idea of jihad and all this, and then they also have attracted the ultra-nationalists, whom whenever they heard Ethiopia become so agitated. And that was the biggest war that happened there. So again, things cool down. We have been telling the people that there are these opportunities that we had. Now, again, in 2023, it was the year that we have degraded Al-Shabaab to the lowest level in its history of 16 years. They were on the run. And the final defeat of Al-Shabaab was on the horizon. They just come up with this idea. On 1st January, after midday, when they announced this MOU, immediately the Shabaab, they made a press release stating that, you see, they come back now. This is the time. Come, let us defend Somalia. They claim that, yes, we do not recognize the government, but we never compromised the territory of Somalia. We never divided the people of Somalia. There is someone who is saying that I do not recognize Somali government, we do not respect the territorial integrity, and we do not respect the unity of the people of Somalia. So they give Shabaab, as we denied Al-Shabaab because of the ideological war we went with Al-Shabaab. They didn't have the opportunity to recruit at all. The Somali people were up against Al-Shabaab. And I have defined Al-Shabaab as a fish that runs short of water. Fish without water comes. The water was the people. And the people now stand against them. And there are community defense forces that the Somali government is supporting. So Al-Shabaab was out of question to move around within the communities. So now they give a platform to recruit new people now because of this illegal step taken by the Ethiopians. So this is the situation right now. We are very much grateful for the government of Italy, who said we are with the international law. We do not accept anybody who is violating other countries. What Ethiopia did on 1st January through that MOU is not different than what Russia did to Ukraine. Luhansk, Donetsk, Hebron, these are the same, just annexing. Simply, Russia, there was no any so-called agreement when Russia was annexing these parts. But Ethiopia, they just go that shield of agreement. Agreement by who? With a regional administration in Somalia. So France cannot come and say, I agreed with a regional administration in Italy, Toscana or Padova or whatever. They cannot say so. So that is this reality in Somalia today, and that's what Ethiopia has did.
So, Mr. President, if I understand well, you suggest that there is the possibility that behind Ethiopia there is somebody else?
That's what I believe. Ethiopia cannot, maybe they have forces, they can send their forces or they can do whatever, but economically, Ethiopia is not in a position to do that. They cannot. There must be someone else, which we will know soon.
So a small step in a greater game.
Greater game of the Red Sea.
Of the Red Sea.
Yes. And Red Sea is a very, very volatile region. You know what's going on in Red Sea. So Red Sea is a very volatile. There are, Somalia was there for a long time. And now we have the Yemen with the Houthis on the other side of the Red Sea. Now we have Sudan in a very difficult situation as well on the other part of the Red Sea. So now, you know, as we are speaking, what's going on, the international maritime transportation on this Bab el-Mandeb and Suez Canal. So Red Sea is a very, very, very volatile region which does not deserve to be agitated further.
One great power that has a huge interest in the Great Sea, as we know, is the Popular Republic of China, that is investing very heavily in Africa. How do you believe that we should deal with this strong Chinese presence in Africa?
Well, what I think is that the China with the Belt and Road Initiative in Africa focused on building infrastructure. Many of the African countries, someone who is athirst, who need water to drink, if you give him a perfume, it will not motivate him. All he wants is a glass of water. China has identified what is that glass of water. Africa is lacking proper infrastructure. And without proper infrastructure, no economic development can take place. China went an approach, yes, the approach is wrong. It has bad consequences, whatever we can say, but the people of Africa, they see the highway, they see the bridge, they see the port, seaport, they see the airport, they see the dam, they see the irrigation system. So this is what we need other partners of the world to do the same. And I think Europe is in a better position to do that. And with the global gateway announced recently in Brussels, I hope that will show, that will adjust or change the approach of the Western world soft way. Yes, I will not say this should not be done. The issue of democratization, the issue of the human rights, the issue of the freedom of expression, the issue of free movement, all these are very, very important principles. They can be held, but a hungry man in the remote part of Africa might not be motivated with that, and that's why uprising and political instability comes. So I think Europe has to look into Africa in a different manner, particularly focusing on those elements that facilitate economic development in terms of food security, in terms of transportation, in terms of energy. Africa has the potential to have green energy in terms of solar, in terms of wind, in terms of thermal. So this has to be the areas that the Western world, particularly the European Union, to focus on investing and improving.
So you're suggesting that while China is investing heavily in infrastructure, the West should bet more on food security and energy. Is that right?
Yes, that is another area. That is an area that's a very big gap in Africa today. The food security is a problem. Of course, the infrastructure, energy, number one, is another area. And addressing the challenges of the climate change as well is very much. For example, there's a huge resources in the world for climate financing, but accessibility of that resources is a challenge to countries like Africa, countries like Somalia. We are suffering greatly to the environmental impact, and we do not contribute the environmental problems of the globe. And again, we have a problem in accessing the financial resources that are available because of the rules and the regulations, because of our capacity, because of our understanding. So what we need is certain level of flexibility, certain level of easily accessible instruments to be put in place so that poorer countries like Somalia or fragile countries in most of African countries can have an access to the environment or climate financing issues.
The other big actor in Africa is Russia. We have seen in the last days 3 countries of the Sahel, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, leaving ECOWAS. And all of them have security agreements with Russia. Russia is also strengthening its position in Northern Africa. Is this worrying you? Are you perceiving this Russia more intense presence on security in Africa?
Well, yes, there is this security phenomenon in Russia. Russia is a big country in the global affairs, but you know, when using a non-state actor as a solution for a state problem, that itself is problematic. Organizations like Wagner, and in the past you have seen what the Blackwaters did in Iraq and other places. So such non-state actor security agencies are the problem. If what is helping or what is going there are the state apparatus from Italy, from Russia, from China, from United States, whatever, because the state actors, they have limitations, they have regulations and rules that controls their behavior. But these profit-oriented private security companies, they just look after profit whether that violates human rights or whether that violates the legitimacy of the state and all this is not a big matter. And what many of the African countries or the world cries when it comes to Russia is that company, Wagner, which is a security company, which is non-state actor, which is, there are no many regulations, global regulations that controls such behavior, as we have seen others in other places. So I think geopolitics is always there, but what I would have suggested is there will not be secure and stable Africa or any one country in Africa as far as there is a poverty, rampant poverty. If we can reduce the gap of poverty, if we can create opportunity for the youth so that they will not go and get the gun. For example, the fighting forces in Al-Shabaab, all of them, they are not there for ideological reasons. But imagine a boy of 10 years today or 25 years, maybe he has a wife and a kid or two, maybe he has an elderly parents, and he cannot afford to provide them a glass of milk, say, to his kids. He's so frustrated. He can be easily attracted with maybe $50 a month or $70 a month, because that gives them the opportunity to provide a glass of milk to his kid or some care to his elderly parents. So as far as that challenge are there, and the majority of the population are young people, there will not be stability at all. So that's why I'm saying we need to focus on the economic matters. We always focus on security, yes, very important. But parallelly, even maybe at the lower level or maybe a less prioritized level, but economic matters has to be there, has to be focused there. Somalia, we have the longest coast in the African continent, both in the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea. We have a high-value fish in the world. One of the high-value fish of the world are available in the territorial waters of Somalia. But again, our people are dying. And when I came to the office in 2022, the first letter I signed was appointing a special envoy for the humanitarian coordination. Because I came to the office at a time when all the international organizations were saying that 7 million Somalis are close to famine. So the country has to declare famine. And when we make an assessment, we realize that we need some level of coordination. And I appointed a coordinator, and he worked very hard with other international partners, and famine was averted. There's never been famine in Somalia. Yes, there are some malnutrition at the child level and the elderly people, but it's not reached to the level of famine. So, and we are, in terms, when you measure Somalia, all the economic factors, you realize that Somalia is a rich country. We have that opportunity of the blue economy. We have the largest per capita of livestock in the African continent. We have close to 10 million hectares of arable land with 2 permanent rivers throughout the year. So when you look here and there, you don't see how people like that can starve. Yes, security is complicated. People were unable to farm. People were unable to fish. People were unable to go and look after their livestock rearing. Yes, all this, but even then, if all of us go to the ocean, to the coastal area, and sit there and go to through the traditional artisanal fishing, we can live. But, you know, the infrastructure is not there. The opportunity is not there. So the whole thing are interlinked. You cannot address only the terrorists. You cannot address only poverty. You cannot address only. So what we need is a multi-factor approach whereby within that framework there are certain priorities. Thank you.
Mr. President, the West and Europe appreciate a lot your efforts against Shabab and the terrorist organization. What is your evaluation in terms of how they have been weakened and what is still missing to be done?
Well, we've been fighting with Al-Shabaab for the last 16 years. The African Union mission with 20,000 plus forces, mechanized with heavy equipment were there. But this was a very domestic insurgent group that has no local agenda or national agenda. Their agenda was a global agenda. So we've been fighting with them militarily. And I was there in this office, the high office of the state in 2012, 2017, based on that experience. And since then, when we came, we changed the strategy of the war. And instead of focusing only military, yes, military is very important, and it is the number one pillar for the fight against terrorism, but it's not enough. So we opened two new fronts. One is Shabab is ideology-based organization, faith-based. So we opened a new front, which is ideological war. What they are propagating is not the true Islam. It's not the real Islam. So we had organized a conference for all religious scholars in Somalia and in the diaspora as well. The government of Somalia invited major religious scholars, known figures within the society. They came together to Mogadishu. They have a conference for 5 days, and the discussions on that 5 days were televised live. More than a dozen TV channels throughout Somalia. So the Somali people were watching and listening what this scholar was. And at the end of the 5 days, they produced a fatwa statement saying that the actions and the behavior of Al-Shabaab are un-Islamic. They have nothing to do with Islam. So the people of Somalia should not be mistaken by some of the nice words or the nice speeches that they are saying. So that has a big blow on the thinking and the mindset of the society. Number two, we established a TV channel 24 hours a day, 7 days a week that advances that ideological war against Al-Shabaab. We've organized a distribution of leaflets in the rural area by helicopters so that the people will be given contact numbers so that they can contact directly through the phone